Great. So welcome to the Agile Strategy Meetup group. My name is Morten, and Eva, it's a real pleasure that you wanted to join us today to tell about your work. We came across each other because I pinged you because I was looking up on hashtag generative strategy, and then I found your amazing work. So really looking forward to hearing more about that and having a chance to discuss that with you today. And you warned us that you might not use the full 30 minutes, but we will still do as we normally do in this group to give you a chance to talk to us about what you're doing with strategy and how people might use your ideas. And then after that, open it up for conversation.
Great.
So please.
Would you mind spotlighting me? Because I think it is easier to see the flip chart paper.
I'm not sure how to do that.
Usually you go into the participants and then with the three dots on the side, you can put the spotlight on one participant.
Okay. So let's see.
That would be okay.
Or you can do it.
The flow because I was already.
Spotlight for everyone. There you go.
Thank you. Thank you. I was already a little bit intimidated by this intro with the amazing work kind of thing. So I'm not here to give a lecture because I think we are all in the same realm of thinking and realm of doing. So who am I to give a lecture to you? But what I want to do today is I invite you into my headspace and I want to tell you a little bit about my journey on this planet and how I came to the thinking I'm currently still evolving, trying, and I hope that we can afterwards discuss it also because I'm also always thankful for new perspectives and new inputs. So usually I introduce myself as I'm a futurist by nature, I'm an engineer by training, and I'm a philosopher by heart. And there is a reason to that because everything I do in my work is somehow a combination out of these three lenses. And so is my approach to strategy, one that I called generative strategy, especially when the generative AI came up. So it has nothing to do with AI at this point, just to put one thinking aside. It is really about how we can engage with longer term thinking in order to generate energy and generate new ideas. So why is it important that I'm an engineer by training? I mean that literal. So I studied at a university which was specialized on metallurgy and mining. So I'm a ceramic engineer and I worked several years for the steel industry. So the good old industries, not the fancy fintech software ones, but the ones which are there for hundreds of years or in the modern way for decades. So as traditional as it gets. And this was my first meeting with strategic approaches because I did not study strategy at university. I studied steel production and refractory production. And when I entered the business world, what I learned was strategy is you envision a goal, you look where you are now, and you plan the way there. So I chose not to make slides, I chose to paint because I think it's a better way to introduce you to my journey. So we started somewhere, we have one clear beginning, one clear end, and we plan a way there. And honestly, for an industry like steel, this worked pretty well for a really long time because the steel industry, with the big player on the market, they had for a long time this stable environments where they could, what Mintzberg calls so famously, the planned strategies. So they enter the market with all their knowledge and with their products in the way, here I am, take it because I know. And it was working for them pretty well. So there was no need really to go away from that approach. And I worked for several companies where the strategic vision was we are going to have XY turnover by the year, let it be 2015, 2020, whatever you want. And then I was working for a company where they reached this goal already 2 years in advance. And people kept working, it was not that everything stopped because the vision was accomplished, but they did not form a new vision and formulate a new strategic plan because it was not due, because this company only did it every 5 years. So that made me wonder at that time, but without a strategy, and we are still moving, where does this direction come from and where does this decision come from? And somehow, due to also other inputs at that point in my life, I collided with future thinking or future studies. Because, when you first dig into future studies, one of the first things you come across is the so-called futures cone. So the futures cone is this, probably you have seen it already. So it is this idea that the future is not one point in time, but the future is a horizon, and the futures open up the more we go into the yet to come. So the farther the time moves along, the more wide this horizon becomes. And when you think about that, then it is already very obvious that this very narrow approach of we see only that leaves away a lot of things that could happen as well. So that's where I encountered also the idea of scenario planning, because scenario planning basically is an answer of strategy to this kind of worldview. So it is this idea you don't anymore have one goal you're aiming for, but you have like several. You define maybe a preferred one, you define maybe a plausible one. There is a lot of taxonomies you can use. There is also, as you know, because you're all professionals, there is a lot of schools of scenario planning about how you form the scenarios, how many scenarios you're using, if you're using archetypes, so if you're using normative. So there's a lot of things going on there. But the basic idea is that you widen the angle when you look into the future. So you're not anymore looking at the future, but you're opening it up into the plural. But the interesting thing when I collided with scenario planning was the more I encountered professionals and talked to professionals, the common answer, so not strategy professionals, I mean people in companies who do the strategy for the company, the common answer, the common statement was, yeah, we do it, but we anyway know that it's not going to happen, but we anyway do it. And I was like, here comes the philosopher by heart. But why? Why are we even planning when we know it is not going to hold? So why are we putting so much efforts and so much resources and creating this plan and this map when everybody involved knows that it's just a nice painting we are doing? And this is where I came into the idea of anticipatory systems and anticipation. And actually, this is not the originally philosophical idea, it's a biological idea. So the concept of anticipatory systems is not by a philosopher, but by a theoretical biologist, my English, Robert Rosen. And the idea of anticipation is because we carry a model of ourselves with us, we are doing simulation with that model of ourselves in us. So we are taking into account possible future states and take action in the now based on what we are anticipating. So that was really, really interesting to me. And then when you're already into the futures kind of world, you are colliding also with the theory of anticipation, because of course, this is not only a biological realm, but there is also a whole body of ontology behind it. And when you encounter this ontology of anticipation, you come across a concept in anticipation theory. It is called the thick present. And the thick present means exactly that we are not in one point imagining a future, but what we have in the now is exactly also a horizon like it is in the futures. So the present as it now is also more or less non-existent. It is a whole set of presents. And of course, when you come into this concept, the next thing you are colliding with is complexity science, because this is exactly what complexity is about. We are in a completely non-linear, very interconnected environment. So there is a lot of nodes, there is a lot of information going on. And this causality, the original strategic planning is based on, so this idea, if I do now this, then happens that, and then happens that, and then I will reach the goal, is not working, because this causality, I make A and then B happens, is not given in a complex system. So at this point, I was in my journey really stuck for a while, because I thought, okay, all the instruments I learned so far, also from future thinking, they are all based on linear causality. So why are we using linear causality for planning when what we deal with is a complex environment? And more, because also, of course, in the last years, especially since the pandemic, complexity is became a buzzword, because for decades we tried to ignore the fact that the surrounding is complex, and we thought that if you just have enough data and if you just model it good enough, we can break it down to a complicated mechanistic system, and we can put away all the complex non-linearity and do not have to deal with that. So we used our mechanistic tools to plan ways in a complex environment. And this caused a lot of friction. This friction, you know, I love to speak in images. So this friction causes a lot of smoke, and the smoke causes even less vision to what is ahead. So I was really wondering, how can you combine the idea of futures and anticipation with the fact of complexity in the now, where we take non-predictability and uncertainty as a given. And in the end, I came about the concept that, I mean, you are aware, because Dave Snowden was last week in exactly this group. So I also studied the Kinevin approach, or the framework. And this idea of making the next best step, so what I see and then I take what I can do. I liked it a lot, but what I was missing, and also was missing in the practice with people I was working with, is the next step, yes, but how do I know in which direction if I have more options? Because the directionality is still a point we kind of need, no? And I'm not a big fan of this idea that every company needs a vision and a mission, because in my experience, a vision only works if everyone sees it. And a lot of times, due to the filters and the lenses we carry with us, we do not have a common view. But still, what I encountered when I did futures work with people, so detached from strategic planning, futures work has the sense of opening up thinking boxes and strengthening the anticipation muscle. So in the sense of in our modern times, we mistake a lot of times anticipation and expectation, which is not the same thing. Expectation is we look to see something, and anticipation is we look, period. And so I was wondering how you can combine these findings on my journey into a framework, so into a strategic doing that generates idea and that also generates energy. So now I have to make a side note here, because as said, I'm an engineer by training, so energy cannot be created. It's the first law of thermodynamics, but energy can be converted. And that's why I also always say I'm doing futures work and not futures thinking, because work is a form of energy, and it's a form of energy that transforms and frees energy which is stored in other parts, especially nowadays in this decision freeze friction. So what I found then was there is when we take the thick present or the complexity of the now, which has these rhizomatic structures of roots of trees, for example, and we are adapting a relationality approach. So in the sense of we cannot think anymore in consequential terms in the sense of I do this, then happens that, but we can engage with our world and with our ecosystem in a relational way, what can grow and what we can foster to grow. So to see organizations embedded in an ecosystem and adopt, instead of a garage mechanistic repair and enhance approach, a fostering and growing approach, we can connect the levels of time like a tree-like structure. So you have a trunk, and then out of the trunk grows a crown. And usually in strategic work, the past is a very ambiguous thing. So there are very few approaches which take the past into the discussion in a surfaced, active way. And also in future thinking, the past has a very negative connotated dimension, because what a lot of people try to do in future thinking is to let go of the past, to do things in a new way, in a different way. But I found, especially because I'm working with organizations that are in the realm where I'm coming from, so in the industrial sector, in the old industries, and there's usually a lot of legacy in companies. They are long there on the market. They are having products which are long there in humanity already, and there is value in that. It is not something you dismiss because of the complexities of the now and because the creator of the yet is we have to do everything differently. So I decided to connect the present, the complexity of the present, with the power of the futures, with the wisdom of the past. And then you get a tree-like structure. But as we know from complexity science, complex adaptive systems do not unfold in an arbolic way, because they are not growing in one direction and then staying stable there. This was an issue I found also in my imaging, because what I tried to do with going away from traditional visualization with icebergs, wheels, whatever it is that has a box around, I found in my practice with people, these images are not relational. People, an iceberg, for example, no one ever talks about the fact that icebergs melt and no one does anything. So it's like they are not creating the agency and the energy we need to move forward in these turbulent times we are now. But then I came across a great tree, which is called the banyan, because what the banyan does is it does not only grow as a tree, but then it forms air roots from the top, which are growing downwards. And some of them, not all, they are growing until the bottom and they are forming new trunks. And from that on, the tree spreads to the side. And I found that this is a perfect image for working with strategy in organizations, because we also need to go away from this progress dogma that we have to go bigger, better, faster, more, because we see in our world that this is ending due to natural resources, due to the complexity we are in, due to the myriad of players out there, due to a lot of causes, but still we can make progress. It does not need to be bigger, better, faster, more. It can be in a different way. And the cool thing about the banyan tree is sometimes these air roots who form new trunks replace the old trunks, because the old trunks, for whatever reason, die. So now you may say, and you have a point there, what does this all have to do with practical strategy? And actually, I tried that already. So I worked with several teams. I did not work with a whole organization with that model. It's not a model, sorry, with that frame. But I worked already with teams within other organizations to give them a tool where they have an ongoing strategic process that generates new idea by taking into account the signals of the futures we can see already now, taking into account that the problems and the issues we've encountered today have complex aspects, other have complicated aspects, so that we can react differently to these kind of things, taking into account also we are coming from somewhere and there is a wisdom and a positive in that, because complex adaptive systems are past dependent without any discussion. So just cutting off the past and saying we don't need to talk about that is not the right way either. But when you surface the past and you look again at how did we do things, what are the strengths we have in our team, in our organization that are enabling new futures and the growth of a new crown or a new air route, or also what holds us back, because there are, of course, in every legacy, there are also things which are not helpful anymore. But when you surface them and when you discuss them, and when you can, in combination with the complexity approach from the presence and the futures approach from the horizons, when you combine that, you can also see what of these are constraining new opportunities and new options, and what of them are enabling them. And what do I maybe have to shift or even let go if possible? Or what do I strengthen in order to create a positive environment for the growth of aerial routes I want to see? And again, the aerial routes, you can, these are then action probes you're doing. So these are little initiatives based on the findings from the 3 time levels. And they are not meant in the sense that we are doing, so not in the old way we do that now and then that happens later, but they are thought of fostering an environment to grow new trunks and to keep growing in the ecosystem. So sorry, I was speaking so quick now. I fall out of breath. Because
It's fine. Please take your time.
no problem. It's more this. I'm very passionate about the things I'm talking. I think you realize that already. Sometimes I just leave it, because what I found in my encounter with futures work is also the issue with setting a horizon as an absolute. So when you define this is how the futures look like, or this is how only as we are living now is the only way to live, this is the only point where you can stand in front of the abyss. Because when you perceive the future's horizon as always moving and always receding, then you can never stand in front of the void, because there is still another step to take. And especially now in our environment, a lot of people are talking about the chaotic environment and the complex environment, and it's this feeling like there is no horizon anymore, but it is there. When we are just taking the time sometimes to lift our gaze and look without expecting what to see. I know this sounds very abstract, and actually in the trials I did with the framework, this is the point which is the most difficult. I always thought that when I started with the frame, I thought that the most difficult is going to be the complexity part, and also then combining and deducting actions from engaging with the horizons. But in fact, it was to open up, to anticipate. Because in the world we are living now, and also because of our business practices and because of the technological framing we are encountering, we unlearned to anticipate. We focused so much on anticipate a future, so to expect, that this open-minded looking just to look is something which is super difficult for people. So I figured that this part needs a lot more attention than I originally thought, because to say again, I'm a futurist by nature, which means somehow, for whatever reason, I'm set up in this way that for me the horizon was always rescinding and change was always a positive. And so I'm engaging in a different way with signals of change and trends than other people might do. So I see you, and I used the full half hour. I just looked at the clock.
You're still doing very well. But Eva, I was wondering, would you be willing to share a bit with us about the template you have for the banyan tree and how you work with that?
Yes. So basically, I shift now. Can you see that here on this side? No? Yes.
Yeah,
Good. So
at least I can.
basically, I told you now the story how I came to it, but I put it, of course, in the modern times. You have to do everything in a canvas, isn't it? Otherwise, it's not valid. So, nice joking. So, what I usually do when I work with teams, because this is also something I realized very quickly, never start with the past. Because if you start with the past, you are automatically in the mechanistic linear way of thinking. The past informs the present, informs the futures. So then it is almost impossible to open up the space again. So what I do now is that I engage first with the futures horizon. And what means engaging with the futures horizon? We are engaging with signals of change. We are creating mini scenarios from signals of change. We are also filtering on a conscious manner what we are giving our attention to and what we are filtering out as noise for us. We are also in this phase already taking a little bit of the past because we are looking in what lenses do we have when we look at signals from the future, because this is a very important point. When you're not aware of which lenses you use to look into the yet to come, you will, first of all, never create a common picture in a team. And then secondly, you will miss opportunities and also pitfalls because you're just blind to them because of the lenses. And lenses are always forged out of the sand of the past. So they are never created just now or somewhere in the futures. So when we looked into the futures and collected signals here, as you see, I adopted that from Canevin because this hexi stick is a really brilliant thing because the people engage in a very different way when you give them hexes than when you give them a rectangular shape, which I was astonished to find true. I'm going back to the present and look together with the people what are the issues you have at the moment. So this is in a very Knevin-like style. You are looking what is complex, you're looking what is complicated, you're looking also how the people, because usually you have in the teams, especially when you work with engineers, you have a big group of very good complicated thinkers in the sense of they are excellent problem solvers and they are excellent in finding solutions for difficult problems, but they really have difficulties to adopt a probe and sense approach because they are not there. I mean, I know it by myself. I went to university and they are training you to make everything complicated and solvable. And this pure idea to say it's not solvable, live with it, is really difficult for a lot of people. And then you leave the complex problems stand for the moment, and then you revisit with the team the past. So the legacy of the company, what does the company do well? What are their core values? And not the ones which are on the papers, but the ones which are really felt and acted on. What are the strengths of the specific team who is a complicated thinker, who is a complex one? What does that mean for our team? How are we engaging with that? And how are we using that to move forward? And then out of this canvas, you find usually clusters of weak signals together with the complex issues you are facing in the now, which you can combine to actions you can take right now into a direction you want to move, but in the sense of probing. So it's not this, I do that now and then it's done and then we never have to visit it again. As said, it's a processual tool. It is not something you do once and then it's done and then it is in the drawer, and then you present it to the board, and 5 years later you revisit it again. The teams I worked with have that in their office or in the team lead office or in the head of whatever, and they are coming back constantly to these kind of things.
Thank you.
Clear?
Yes.
It's complicated to make a joke. So
Is it time for us to start having a conversation?
I just want to use one closing sentence for my
Of course.
soapbox
Yes.
moment, and then I'm open for this discourse. What I found in my work is that to use the sentence of the great film Back to the Future, Marty, we have to go back to the future. And it's really like this. We have turbulent times, there is no discussion in that, but engaging with possibility and engaging with this space is really creating this sense of I can instead of I have to. I'm also not so much a fan of all this urgent talk we have now, also in business. I just was in a business convention last week where I heard what everything is urgent at this point. I think it's not helpful because yes, we have to take action, but before I had my think there, thinking still helps and is a valid approach to a lot of things. Thank you.
Thank you.
That was loud and passionate and no one wants to say anything.
No. Well, I think actually we will start by opening it up. I have some questions I would like to ask, but maybe you want to put a word on your thumbs up, Thomas. I don't know if you noticed, Eva, but Thomas was giving you a thumbs up when you talked about problem-solving engineers. You're muted, Thomas.
Yeah, well, just I have exactly the same experience with very skilled people working with complicated problems. But when we enter kind of the complex domain, we start being more in trouble, right? Because we need to really figure out what problems we want to solve, and is this really a problem? And that's a different trade. We jump into the solutions very fast. So I spend a lot of my time trying to keep people in sort of the problem field. So, yeah.
That resonates because I mean, I know by myself, when you're a trained engineer, you're trained to know, and engaging with complexity and futures is embracing the idea of not knowing and being okay with that. And this is really, really difficult. Also for me, I'm here preaching, and of course there is issues or there are situations in my life where it's exactly the same. I don't want to say that I'm always the one who is always doing it in the appropriate way. It's not like that.
I have a master's degree in economics, so I know absolutely nothing.
I was with Thomas last week, and I know that's not true. Any more questions from anyone or something to pick up on?
Well, yes. To continue, I think you had an interesting notion about organizations don't necessarily need to have a vision or a mission. Could you elaborate a bit on that? I think I agree, but yeah.
I feel that is also something that is more and more adopted in organizations. Why I have a problem with a vision statement is because it locks in the future. And for me, futures work is all about opening up possibility instead of filling that space from the beginning. And when you have because a lot of times vision statements are meant to be very clear and very, how are the dogmatic things about that? So everybody has to understand and everybody can follow. But I think, as I said before with the futures cone, my task as a futurist, when I come as a futurist into an organization, is to widen that angle. And when I make a vision statement, it is exactly the other thing around. It is focusing all this possibility on only one, and I don't see the point. And understanding and I emphasize direction is important. If you don't have any direction where you're going, it is floating. And I live that as an employee in organization, it is floating without directionality. But you don't need to lock in the futures into one point in order to create that. And I think this is something which is more and more adopted, especially by smaller organizations. Big organizations, corporations, of course, they are still very much under the business management spells. And let's see. And what I wanted to add, I with my approach and my thinking, I don't want to dismiss scenario planning. I don't want to dismiss traditional strategic planning in any way, because there are contexts and there are industries and there are projects where they are super helpful and they are valid still. So I don't want to say it has to be all Banyan and all, you know, a non-linear thinking, and it is not like this. But we have to more and more make like an augmented approach to strategy. Not, we have to, in my opinion, move a little away from the dogmatic way of doing things. We do it only this way, and this is the way with this vision, and then we direct everything to that. But to allow and foster a variety depending on the context.
Yes, bounded applicability.
Anyone else?
Well, I have, okay. I'm on. Eva, you talk about vision and clear, but it's as though because it is clear, it is static. But of course, you can have a clear vision that is constantly amended or changed by feedback from the real world. So the vision doesn't have to be static. It because it is clear.
That is true. But when you amend it all the time, why implement it in first place? Why not directly go with a broader approach and aim for a horizon instead of an island?
Well, why implement it in the first place? I think it's helpful to get the best vision you can get now, move towards it, and then learn, and maybe that the vision was wrong, or even that the strategies were wrong. But so I'm interested in a continuous evolutionary process of moving towards something better. But the definition of something better can be amended as you learn more about the environment and what works.
Yes, I understand. So I understand where you're coming from, and I partially agree. I have an issue with better, because better is always relative to good. So better means we are good already. So why getting better? Because we are good already. And so it is like this is what I meant also with the dominant paradigm of progress. Progress in our still modernity. So from the cultural philosophical view, still we are in the era of modernity, is still bigger, better, faster, more. And I think this in a lot of organizations, it is not about becoming better. It is about surviving, and surviving has now a very negative connotation. It's surviving or die, and I don't mean it in that way. I mean it really in evolving in the ecosystem, but that is not necessarily better to what is now, but it is, we are adapting constantly, and by adapting constantly, we are removing and doing that in a more seamless way than it is done now in a lot of times. We are removing friction points which are making it bad. So maybe in that sense it is better now that I think about it, because being non-adaptive, and I use adaptive in contrary to agile, because agile is always has an aspect of quick and speed, and adaptation does not necessarily mean to be speedy and quick. So I think what a lot of organizations these days are looking for is this: how do I become more adaptable and more organic? And in this sense, in my practice at least, I've found that this locked-in vision, even if I see it as an iterative goal, is not helpful. Did I make my point clear, or did I lose myself in my own headspace? This happens regularly to myself. I'm sorry for that.
Okay. Well, you made many points, and we could have many discussions. Many people, when they have a vision, they have in fact fixed it. Is you don't have to fix it. It can be adaptable. You can be agile about your vision.
Yes, maybe what we have here now is a
Anyway, else?
discussion on the words we are using, because I think I'm using the word vision as it used to be applied in strategic, as said in the beginning, as these one futures. You are applying it in the sense I'm talking about horizons, and I'm using different words because I want to that people also understand that it is a different approach if I lock in or if I make it movable. But I think in the basics we agree, actually.
I think so. Nice discussion. I will shut up for a while.
Let's keep it here. Let's keep it here. Any I'm sorry to use his name, but iPad number 2, you turned on your camera.
It's Greg Keegan.
Greg.
Oh, yeah, yes. I'm sorry.
Hi, Greg. Sorry again.
No problem. I was moving around and feeding the dog and everything. So I quickly signed up with my iPad. Well, it actually took quite a bit. I haven't signed in on this one before. That's why I'm called iPad 2. And I was moving around, but I was listening, and I thought you have a very interesting approach, very metaphoric. I liked it. I learned a bit about banyan. What is it? Banyan trees. Like the idea of the roots growing back down. Very visual. But to Tom's point, I'm going to leave Eva alone. But to Tom, usually, and maybe to Eva's defense, vision is such high level that it wouldn't change on a dime for a dime, but rather it's something that's longer lasting, a North Star or something that I think the strategy changes more often or how to get there, but where you want to go, you should know, and that should be somewhat stable. If you imagine traveling from somewhere, knowing your destination, and then as you're driving, the destination keeps changing, your Navi is going to go nuts. So that just my 2 cents to that. And nice to be back, Morten. I've been away for a while, but I missed last week's, but I'm back now. So we'll be seeing you.
Good to have you. Eva, I had one thing I find fascinating about what you do is that you have the banyan tree, because there is a wave of nature comparisons at the moment. There's an octopus book coming out quite soon, which is a fascinating animal because it has brains in all its limbs and can grow new brains. And other people use bees and the way they create their hives. It's one of Faith's favorite examples. So there seems to be this tendency that we compare. But I really like how you use the banyan tree, because what is unusual in the way I understand you is that you actually have a way of making the future explicit, which I somehow sense that complexity people hold back from. You don't create a future, and you somehow found a way of bringing it in explicitly. What's your thoughts around that? Is that violating any principles, or how do you see yourself?
So. I guess I violated like I don't know how many principles now. To your prior point, I think that we are picking up on nature metaphors because organizational work becomes more and more this thinking of being in an ecology instead of being a machine. I think this thinking, this relational thinking, in contrary to the mechanistic thinking, is more and more diffused everywhere. And so how do you transport complex ideas with an image, with a metaphor? Because our brain works differently with metaphors than it works with normal language. So we are processing it in a different part of our brain, and that's why we understand that better. And that's why I'm also so metaphoric in my speech, because metaphors engage with the whole body. They are more embodied than formalized language. So in futures work, this is very important, because what you want is that people see a future and want to work with the future. And I guess you're right. I'm pretty sure that pure complexity thinkers will never adopt my framework and will never adopt the Banyan, because of course the futures, they are unpredictable, and they are not creatable in this sense that, as said before, in this vision sense, in this I paint the island and this is the future I create. But the futures are usable as a source of energy for action in the now. And this is what I'm trying to do, because a lot of times we dismiss the futures as pure fantasy and pure imagination, and it doesn't have to be like this, because there is an energy and a power in our power to anticipate. And we are kind of dismissing this power.
Well, and the way I see it is that the whole idea of strategy becomes meaningless if there is no intent behind it. It somehow needs to have an implied choice, which, to the point of the earlier conversation, you can change as often as you want. But strategy is somehow meant to move you in a certain direction, given whatever you're thinking. So in that sense, I think you explained that quite well, is that you give the travel a destination, even if it's not, like you perhaps talked about, Greg, it's not a definite destination, but it can be like, it can change its direction over time as you learn more from the possible futures.
And to your point before, I think it was Greg. Did I pick that up correctly? Because it's still iPad.
Yeah. Number two.
Because you were making the point that driving in your car and then the target is moving and then your Navi goes nuts. This is exactly feeding into my point. We are not driving anymore. There is no solid ground we are on. So there is no road we are following. There is a sea and there is islands and there is a lot of movements and winds and monsters. And I know we are all trained that there needs to be this goal and then we are focusing on this, but biologically we are anticipatory. So we are like continuously simulating different kind what could happen to us and then take action based on that. So I think there is some, I know this term is also very debated, but there is some unlearning here needed, that we need always to have a fixed goal. I don't think that biologically we do need that, but maybe I'm wrong.
But you could say, just coming back from Helsinki, where I spent time with some of your colleagues, I mean, there are people who would argue that even articulating a wish for the future will have the impact that you talked about with the laminated 5-year vision. So even if you make up your mind where you think we are going or what you think you should do, you would bias yourself to not really see the full spectrum of what is possible.
Which is what she pointed out, and I thought that was very good with the horizon. And if you just keep going in straight ahead, you're going to miss right and left opportunities. I thought she captured that quite well. I don't know, Martin, if I cut you off
No,
there.
exactly. So well, I think, well, it's okay. We're not that many, so feel free to chip in. Did you finish your point, Greg?
Yes.
Yes. So I think the point that you're alluding to, Greg, is that if you put your eyes on one place in the horizon, you will not see other places in the horizon. Which is even the extreme of that, is that there's only one point in the horizon. And the thing I have been struggling with for a while is that to what extent can you have intent as part of the equation when you want to figure out what is the art of the possible? When is the moment where it's okay to choose, knowing that means that other opportunities might slip away from you?
I can, okay, this is now the pragmatic speaking. There is no decision without a choice. So every decision you're taking, even if you're taking the decision to not taking a decision, it's a decision. So in that sense, you will always, the moment you take action, you will cut down possibility, but you can minimize the impact of that by building on participatory approaches, because I have my cone, I'm looking into the future.
Yeah.
So I shed my light on this variety of possibility. But when I take another person who comes with another view, they shed their light on a different set of possibility. And when I take yet another, then I see more. So I think the participatory aspect is very important in that work. That you're not losing sight.
You describe it really well. So as you make one choice, you might close one set of options, but you will in that way generate a new set of options, which is probably to the point of generative strategy. Tom, you're so polite, please.
Okay. So in spite of my discussion of the long-term vision that could be changed, I actually have another vision in the book I put in the chat, by the way. And that is the world where, I think it's closer to what Eva is talking about. But she did not articulate it this way. So we are all, in any system, we're in a world of what I call state. And these are all the things that influence our existence and life. All the people, organizations, and things like the weather. Okay. Now, what are we trying to do in nature? Well, actually, first we're trying to survive, and then we're trying to thrive. Okay. And we do this by what I call harmony and balance with the stakeholders, or to be more specific, with or needs of the stakeholders. And I describe this in great detail in my books. So that's enough. But I think that's that. So there is a nature paradigm here of any system or subsystem has a set of stakeholders that influence its survival and thriving, and we are not trying to win or to achieve. We are trying again first to survive. That's the first rule of nature, survival, and then the second, when we have survived, to thrive, to have a good life. That's it.
I'm not sure that was a question.
No, it was not. I think it was. But what I want to add to this point is what I said already earlier on. I think what is currently ongoing and what needs to happen even more is in the modern mechanistic worldview, we are strengthening this paradigm of progress being more. And I think we are now underlying here a paradigm shift. That is also why so many natural metaphors are coming up, because we are beginning to understand that in a because in the economy we live in is not anymore undersaturated, it is saturated everywhere. There is too much of everything. So we need a new paradigm, what thriving means when it does not mean more. And this is what I tried to say with the Banyan. I think for me personally, I found that one possible new paradigm in a meta-modern, hyper-modern, whatever modernity we are now entering, could be enough. And enough does not necessarily mean enough of everything, but enough means also taking this choice and let go of other opportunities. But now the philosopher, so you see why I'm saying I'm a philosopher by heart, because ultimately I'm always coming to these kind of questions and thinking.
Well, so I think there is an aspect of this which must be interesting. So the concept of clarity, and I'm not a philosopher, I'm just a user of words. So clarity, is that something you find or something you create?
I think, I mean, in the meta-modern mindset, you are always approaching things with a both-end perspective. So it's not an either-or. I think it's not an either-or here as well. So I think it depends on the context. It depends on what kind of clarity you are looking for, that sometimes you are able, through actions, through participatory approaches, through opening up your mind, to create the clarity. And sometimes you will just find it by pure chance, because also one aspect of complexity is emergence, and that we cannot create, but that happens. So I think it's a both end, actually. But open for debate.
Yeah.
Real quick, I put in the chat first a free book on optima, which is about the balance of many factors. And then, since you talked about clarity, I put in my little free booklet, Clear Communication. That's the short
Thank
reply.
you. We're approaching the full hour. Any final
Maybe just a short comment. As you know, Morten, I've worked with Dave Snowden and Kynefin for a long time, and his estuarine mapping is, of course, also a metaphor from nature. And then I just came upon, because Morten and I were on the same conference in Helsinki last week, and there was this saying that we should be able to exist between a dog whistle and a checklist.
Say that again, Thomas.
We need to be able to exist between a dog whistle and a checklist.
Oh, yes.
So,
yeah.
I just think that was a nice way of phrasing it. The uncertainty that surrounds us.
Thank you for that. I will take that with me.
Eva, anything we can do for you?
So you can find me on LinkedIn under my name, or shall we put my contact? Happy to, if you reach out, feel free. If you are more interested in the approach, there is documentation. I just chose deliberately not to use slides here, but to use my full presence in order to engage better with you. I hope that worked. And I would be happy to receive feedback or comments or perspectives, because as said, it is a frame, it is not fixed, and I have not the wisdom of it all. I'm a deep believer in participation, and I think it is only enriching.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your attention, all of you.
Thanks a lot for. And I definitely prefer this kind of presentations to PowerPoint, to nobody's surprise, probably.
Me too. So also when I'm the visitor in the room, because especially in a virtual setting, slides are super taking a lot of energy and taking a lot of attention, where it should go in another direction.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Have
Bye-bye.
a great evening.
Bye. See you.
Bye.